Joining me now is Dr. Balbina Hwang, visiting professor at Georgetown University and former senior special advisor at the State Department. Dr. Hwang, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
This signed document by President Trump and Chairman Kim says North Korea is committed towards working toward denuclearization. Do you think this summit was a success, in your view?
Well, I think that it's actually a mistake to define the summit as, either a success or a failure. From the beginning, we should never have been thinking about this in terms of a zero-sum type of a summit. I think actually President Trump made a very valid point by saying that it was really about meeting Kim Jong-un and trying to set up a personal relationship. In fact, that is really what the purpose of the summit was about. And it was actually important because North Korea has been one of the most intractable problems in international relations, and this has been a very, very difficult regime to deal with, and it has been a very mysterious regime for most of the world. And so it was actually very important to meet this leader face to face and try to set up a relationship and establish a relationship. And I think President Trump actually did manage to begin that process. Now, in terms of the denuclearization, no, I don't think the summit actually went very far at all. And all it really did was to summarize and reiterate what has already been agreed to in previous statements and agreements.
You talk about the problems with the regime. One of the problems is human rights abuses. And of course, human rights advocates are hoping President Trump would bring up more of the problem with the tens of thousands of North Korean citizens in labor camps, some of them Christians as well. During his State of the Union, President Trump even brought this up. Do you think that human rights abuses should have been more of a priority during this summit?
Well, yes, absolutely. And in fact, it's very important to point out that until very recently, in fact, the one area in which President Trump has actually been amazingly and surprisingly consistent for a president who has been arguably incredibly unpredictable and absolutely inconsistent, especially on human rights. And I think it's been correct to have been critical about him in terms of his stance on human rights around the world, except on North Korea. He has been remarkably, surprisingly, very, very strongly in support of calling out North Korea about human rights at every single public forum. He did this not only at the State of the Union address, but in every single speech. Every single time it came to talking about the Korean Peninsula. He's done this when he went to South Korea. It was actually quite remarkable, and I gave him so much credit for it. And it was so important because North Korea is absolutely one of the worst human rights abusers in the entire world, and it has been for 70 years. And absolutely, its treatment against Christians and against religious freedom is one of the worst. And by the way, it's hundreds of thousands. We can not call it anything less than concentration camps.
Critics say President Trump's decision to stop or halt the joint U.S.-South Korean military drills and to talk about potentially removing U.S. troops slowly from South Korea as a mistake, or at least giving some more leverage to North Korea. Do you think that's true? Do you think we're giving too many concessions to them? And what do you think that means for South Korea?
Well, yes and no. I think it was actually not surprising at all, given that this is absolutely what this president, meaning Donald J. Trump, this is, I believe, what he himself has personally believed for a very long time, even before he assumed office. And he has clearly said and believed this throughout his campaign for the presidency and believe this as he has sat in the Oval Office. And this goes against what all of the security establishment has felt and what many of his advisors have advised him. This is not a partisan idea. This is essentially what the U.S. national security environment has essentially supported since 1950, which is to support the U.S. alliance for South Korea. Now, interestingly, I think for the very first time since the Korean War, you actually have a time when you have a North Korean leader and a South Korean leader and a U.S. president that actually supports the removal of U.S. forces from the Korean Peninsula.
And are willing to all talk to each other about it.
That's exactly right. And so I think that now we are seeing the beginning of this process. So we'll simply have to see.
Right. Like I said, if anything, it's a first step. So many issues that we'll continue to cover. Dr. Balbina Hwang, visiting professor at Georgetown University, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.